Welcome to the first specific panel of the day. I know we just had a general session. It's definitely not the last panel of the day, certainly not the least. Somewhere in the middle, medium or middle term rentals. It's growing in popularity as a strategic alternative to the traditional short-term or long-term rental model. So with travelers seeking homes, often furnished from 30, 60, 90 or more days, MTRs are bridging the gap between short-term flexibility and long-term stability. The increase in natural disasters, especially what's happening in California, highlight the importance of MTR as an important component of every community's housing stack. My home burned down when I was in high school and came to Massachusetts. And if you want to know what the most memorable reminder was that we lost a home? Opening the hotel mini fridge. And there were no MTR options for us at the time, in the 90s. And I argue that right now in California, MTR is the most important housing type right now. So to incentivize more investment into this product, stakeholders will need to understand the following: what type of markets are conducive to MTRs, what are the regulations and operating nuances of managing MTRs, and what are the distinct components in MTR for technology, marketing, and occupancy management. So this panel is going to be organized as follows. We're going to do some introductions, we're going to have a panel discussion. I'm going to look for intimate details and opposing views, if possible. And feel free to keep it spicy, but under 30 seconds per comment, because we have a lot to cover. Then we're going to do the Q&A from the audience. Please submit them as you think of them, and I would love for everyone to upload any questions they see, and from there, we're going to select a couple. By way of intro, I'm Ron Bassi, I'm the moderator for the panel. I'm a boutique real estate private equity shop called New Holdings. We have an in-house management brand, Stay New, comprising a mix of short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, co-living, and boutique hotels. Before Airbnb started, I was managing family assets and MTRs in the late 2000s, using online classifieds targeting tech professionals from India. And how's that for niche? We have a panel with an eclectic background, but with one thing in common: they love the dirty 30. That's right, the 30 night minimum, the MTR. Panelists, please introduce yourself and be sure to mention your property types, your portfolio size, and how long you've operated MTR properties. We'll start with Vivian.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vivian Yip. I'm in Austin, Texas. I have a property management company that specializes in the midterm rental space and extended stay model. That's Hestia 360. And then on top of that, I have a brand called Hestia, where I gather the best properties with the best hosts, and we help standardize those properties into a standard amenity, and then we bring that brand to the businesses that use temporary housing. We've had that brand now for about 2 years. We've grown to 250 homes and looking to grow further. And I'm excited to share everything I know about midterm rentals today.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda, also known as Amanda the Traveling Realtor. I do own a portfolio of properties in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have 25 right now that are mixed. I own some, I arbitrage some, and then I market/manage some. And we are growing. I'm really loving the fact that I'm only doing midterm rentals because I'm using this to attract relocation clients, because I also own a real estate firm there as well. So doing that, and then I'm really getting into a lot of AI this year. It's exciting.
Morning, everyone. My name is Benjamin Vale, founder of Housepitality. We are a furnished rental manager based in Columbus, Ohio. We are also a real estate brokerage and Ohio's largest furnished rental management company. And honestly, we focus mostly on midterm, so I'm just really excited to be here with you all.
I'm Denise Kaufman. I'm CEO of Sojourn. Sojourn is a furnished rental property manager in the DC, Northern Virginia area, all the way down through Tidewater. And we actually are completely agnostic about length. We have a strong background in short-term rental, and from our inception, we've done both. So really, length is defined by the regulatory environment applicable to the property and the rhythm of the market.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to do a quick poll from the audience. Raise your hand if you currently operate MTRs or dedicated MTRs. And leave your hand up or raise it again if you converted them from STR. Okay, all right, cool. So that gives us a little bit of an idea. The premise that I had coming into this was that a big reason operators choose NTRs are because in markets STRs are not allowed due to minimum night stay restrictions. So I just wanted to hear from the panelists, who's operating MTR due to restrictions, and has it worked out for the better, or would you prefer STR in those units if you had the choice? Is anyone on the panel?
I mean, I'm in Washington, D.C., so I could definitely respond to that question. So we started as a company with the hybrid model, as I mentioned, but about 2 years, well, they had regulations on STR, but they weren't enforcing them. And then after COVID, they started strictly enforcing them. So we did have some units that could no longer do short term. So I think in a perfect world, you could fluctuate back and forth, depending on your market, again, from short term to midterm, because if you take DC as a market, in the springtime, if you could do short term, you can, it's cherry blossoms, etc. You can make a lot of money. In January, February, nightly is not very lucrative, so if you can get a monthly renter in there during the slow months, it's great. And then we have like this huge rush of interns for the summer. So I guess my point is that I believe if you can, and it's not easy, do both short-term and mid-term in a property, then you can fully leverage that property and get the greatest amount of occupancy and therefore the greatest amount of revenue, which is really, as property managers, that's our obligation, to generate revenue for our clients.
Awesome. And does anyone on the panel feel strongly that MTR strategy as an exclusive strategy for a property makes more sense in a lot, for a variety of reasons? I'd love to hear. No? Okay.
I don't know, I kind of do. I mean, I'm on 95% of my properties are all midterm rentals. I do put on a property for maybe 2 or 3 weeks if I'm not booked. I'll throw it on Airbnb. But for my particular business, the way that I'm using these properties, the way that I'm marketing these properties, it's feeding another business. So for me, the midterm rental, the rates are great, but it's also feeding us real estate sellers as well. So it works in my particular business.
Love it.
Yeah, I just want to chime in there that I think that I share this sentiment that the optimal revenue producing property is both. I will also say that it's ineffective to target both. It is more effective, and we see, to target midterm rentals on properties that are more popular for that. And what I mean by that is using a pricing strategy and a minimum night stay strategy that doesn't allow short-term rentals to happen. Because as everybody on this panel will say, most midterm bookings, or a lot of them, happen very last minute, and you need a completely empty calendar. So if you are seeking a short-term rental strategy, you actually are excluding yourself from being available for most midterm rental demand. And so therefore we do have a good portion of our portfolio that we target the midterm rental strategy, and then when the gaps become available in shorter term distances, we open them up.
Perfect. We're going to get into pricing and occupancy as well a little later, so I appreciate that comment. One other thing on the legal side of things, I'm sure many of you are wondering, what are the issues with MTR? So one issue is walking the tightrope between lodging and tenant laws, where MTR gets gain tenant rights despite what you may have in your rental agreement. I'll start with Dunsi. As a former practicing attorney, I'm sure you've delved into this. So what legal and risk considerations should operators watch out for?
Yeah, well, I think, as you mentioned, that in terms of, there really are 2 different businesses, and from a regulatory perspective, they are also 2 different businesses and a legal perspective, both for the property and for the people staying. So if you are a transient guest, there's a certain, as the property manager or owner of the property, you have a lot more rights in terms of what you can do to that guest if they don't pay, versus, and this also is jurisdiction dependent, because we operate in Virginia and DC, and the rules, landlord-tenant rules are very different. But in DC, which is a very, very, very tenant-friendly jurisdiction, once you go over 30 days, that person is technically a tenant, and you have lots of obligations in terms of disclosures executing a lease, etc. But I should mention, it's not just their length of stay, it's also the license that you have for that property. So if you do not have a transient license, you, again, in DC, you don't have the ability to lock out a guest or things like that if they don't pay, if they need stuff, and they're over 30 days, your obligations in terms of returning that stuff are different. So they really are completely, there's two separate laws. One is transient and one is landlord-tenant.
Yeah, I want to move on. I want to take another poll with the audience about demand drivers. So get into some fun stuff here. This is also for the panelists and those in the audience that operate NCRs. Raise your hand if this is a top 2 driver in your portfolio. So I'm going to run it down the list. So medical travel. Okay. Business travel. Right. I'm also looking at the panelists here. Academic. Immigration, digital nomads or staycations, and finally relocation. Okay. Panelists, I'd love to hear, we're going to start with you, Vivian, and go each of you. If you could please share your top 2 demand drivers.
So I'm in the single family home space as well as duplexes. And the foundation of our business is on Airbnb. And then the other component is while we set up and automate our Airbnb business, I go and find direct booking. The Airbnb business, we get a variety of different guests. Usually it's families or corporate travelers, construction teams that come and stay in our properties. Because we've set up our rooms for that, we don't really have bunk beds. We have more queen beds and king beds, so that attracts more professional travelers. But we also get the families as well. Secondarily, when we approach the insurance relocation housing companies, we're attracting families that have been displaced typically. So those are our 2 drivers.
Thank you.
Mine's very similar as far as like insurance claim clients. I'm getting a lot of those, and then also, like I mentioned earlier, the relocation. That's my bread and butter. That's who I spend all of my marketing dollars on. Are people mostly moving from California to North Carolina, and so that's what I'm attracting.
Yeah, for us, there's. I would just say in general, it's corporate or corporate bookings, and most of the time that's construction crews. Sometimes it's other workers, but specifically in our market, one thing that's happened and is a big driver for us is Intel is building a factory near Columbus, Ohio, and there are 14,000 construction workers that show up every day, and there's only about 7,000 hotel rooms in Columbus. So there is just a huge demand for furnished midterm housing in that specific area. So, we as a business have even just focused on purchasing properties for investors in that area and just focused on that demand because we can see that it is so great. But we do still get some insurance relocations from families. And then, as people move to Columbus, we house them short term and midterm, so relocation as well.
We operate in 2 very different markets. So we have a large presence in Norfolk, and there we have, they're building a huge bridge, so we have a lot of construction clients, and also there's a Navy base and things like that. So DC is its own market. So, we have people going, I can't even, it's just a great midterm market because you have people interning on the Hill, you have people coming for secondments, you have the embassies. It's a very large market and it's not traditional. So, but I would say we also partner with corporate housing providers because sometimes they have clients and then they use our inventory to house their clients. And then we have like some corporate clients, some theaters, things like that.
Awesome. So we know there's demand. Let's talk about the property types. The premises, most property types are going to be urban located, condos, multifamily, single family. And does anyone on the panel have a different type of property that you utilize for MTR, whether it's a suburban market or rural or villa, more leisure oriented?
One of my best properties is on the border of the old neighborhood and a brand new subdivisions. And our biggest clients are the ones that are building houses. And it's in a great school district. It's a single family home and single story 3 bedrooms with a large yard and pet friendly. So we touch on those pet friendly, single story, great location, great schools. And I think usually when you have those 3, they will do really well. But contrary, I do have one property that my client has out in the suburbs, really, really far suburbs, great school district, beautiful home, but we struggle to get traction because there is a 30-day minimum and an HOA that's constantly looking for violators on Airbnb. So we struggle with that one.
So that's a cool niche. I'm sure some of you in the audience are wondering about unit sizes, and I'll just give you a statistic from Furnished Finder's 2024 report of the 300,000 listings that are on their platform. 50% of the units are 1-bedroom studios, 25% are 2 bedrooms, 22% are private rooms, and 15% are 3 beds, and 10% are 4 beds or more. So, I mean, it's kind of a pretty sort of equal distribution if you combine the 3 and 4 beds as in one category. And that's just a little interesting tidbit I wanted to share with you guys. And I'd like to transition over to design and guest experience. Very important topic. Vivian, I'll start with you. You built a design checklist for your followers. And so if you could share, what are some of the distinct MTR guest requirements that you have?
So actually, it's not really so much the design. We want something that shows like almost like a model home, but it's really for us, it's really more about the amenities because the Hestia brand is supposed to encompass an extended stay home, meaning it has the right amenities. So many of us walk into an Airbnb and we don't know what we're going to get. So the idea behind Hestia is to have a checklist that when they become a Hestia branded home, that they're going to follow our checklist for everything in a kitchen, like cutting boards, a good chef knife, enough cups, plates, and everything should be white because that's the corporate housing standard. And then of course we're trying to get them to buy new sheets, to do the white sheets as well if they hadn't already just invested in something. So for us in the Hestia brand, which is by Corporate Rentals USA, we're trying to bridge the gap between a standard Airbnb property and corporate housing standards so that we can more easily enter the corporate housing space. So it's more about amenities.
Yeah, exactly. Amanda, if you could chime in.
Yeah, all that's great. We definitely stock our kitchens with everything that you're going to need. Like literally, our slogan is just bring your suitcase. We have workspaces in all of our properties. We have the desks, some of them have monitors, obviously work chairs. That's really important. And then the outdoor like grilling areas, just areas to just hang out. I mean, just think like you're bringing your suitcase, you don't have anything, and you just want to be able to walk into a home and be comfortable. That's what you're going to get with all of our properties. And so everything's going to be completely stocked.
Ben, Dundee, do you guys have anything that you feel is a unique, distinction that an MTR property must have?
Yeah, I'll just add, the properties that we're targeting for construction workers, for instance, we want to have more LVP and less carpet. And just in general, furniture and things that are more durable, easier to clean, last longer. When I first started this business, we did a lot of short-term rentals, and it was a lot of really trying to impress with, the top-level design. And that's not necessarily the product here. A lot of our guests are working 10, 12-hour days, and that, they didn't come to have a vacation. They came to work, and then they want a very comfortable place to relax, after work. And so that's what we try to provide. We have grill, some outside amenities, things like that. But really just creating durable, repeatable product on the interior of the house is the key for us.
I'll be quick. I would just say Sojourn itself, much like Vivian, we are creating a brand, and so we have certain brand standards, whether it's short-term or long-term, that relate to all the things that touch the guest. And one of the things we think is so important, whether it's short-term or mid-term, is the bedding and the bed and the sleep experience. So generally that goes across. We have certain demands of properties when we onboard them related to that. But the other thing I would just say is washer dryer.
Yeah,
Definitely.
And easy parking.
Yeah.
And photograph it and market the washer and dryer for sure.
Yeah.
Love it. Let's talk about distribution. Panelists, what are the distribution channels you use that are distinct for MTRs or that are, I guess, representative of your MTR bookings? whether online or offline. Let's just, what we'll do is we'll give your top two and run it down the line.
Oh, okay. I use Airbnb as well as Corporate Rentals USA. With Airbnb, I'm just attracting the largest public audience since 25% of nights booked on Airbnb are 30 nights and more. So that's a really huge revenue driver in this space for my business. And then on top of that, Corporate Rentals USA, we have relationships with ALE Solutions, Sedgwick, Alacrity, CRS Temporary Housing, and we're trying to find the right properties from our database and match them with the housing needs for the insurance displaced guests.
So for a lot of my relocation, I'm with an international real estate firm, EXP Realties. We've got about 90,000 agents. So I run the midterm rental, short-term rental groups within that company. And so a lot of my stuff comes from that. We have like an internal system for our company. And then also I have my assistant hitting up all the real estate agents and brokerages all over to tell them what we're doing and to drive traffic directly to our website. Probably about 90% or more of our bookings are coming directly from our website. And then we also do a lot with ALE Solutions and temporary housing and all that as well.
I'll just add that, again, when I first started, it was short-term rentals, and most of that came through Airbnb and VRBO, and it was very much you prepare the property, you list it, and the bookings will come. Midterm rentals, as opposed to that, feels very relationship-based. And you can list on Furnish Finder, you can list on ALE, but you have to build and maintain those relationships with your current guests and the company they work for. And also realtors are a great networking, in Columbus, Ohio, we have like a Facebook group for all realtors. Can't tell you how many midterm stays I've gotten from a realtor who has somebody coming in town. So I think that it's a lot more work. It's a longer sales process, and you just have to be a little bit more creative, but the demand is there. And someday there may be a platform where all of these bookings can come through, but right now it is not, and it's very dispersed.
Well, we, again, don't necessarily distinguish, so our properties are distributed on the short-term rental sites. I agree with you, Ben. It's 100% knowing your market and building the right relationships. But we are actually on Blue Ground's site. So our properties are on Blue Ground's site. So I guess we approach it as we're property managers. Our obligation is to create occupancy. So I think that those 30-day sites are coming, and I think the PMSs in the short-term world know that, and they're building those relationships. And so more and more, we're going to be able to push out our product through your STR PMS.
Perfect. We're doing good on time, first of all. I like that a lot. So we're gonna get into revenue and occupancy. We brought that up a couple times here. You have the property listed. You got to manage revenue and occupancy. And what can you tell us about your pricing strategy? We're actually going to start from the other side. We've done start with you, and then work this way. And actually, maybe if I can add, if you can include your target premium over LTR, your target discount from STR.
Yeah, we have a very, again, using our STR background, we have revenue managers, etc. So we really apply that. We don't have a formula. It's very seasonal also, especially for the properties that can do both, because obviously in the springtime, if you can do short-term, in DC, we don't want you to have a midterm renter, but in January, you can. And then, so in terms of pricing strategy, it's we spend a lot of time on it and we focus on it. We're using our guesty calendar management for pricing, and that probably didn't tell you guys very much, except for that we're very hands-on with it and it's very seasonal dependent, and obviously also relationship dependent. So if you have a construction company that's going to take 50 units for 9 months, then you're going to negotiate that with them. So.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I will say that just in general, sometimes you're not, with the relationships, you're not benefited by having the price posted, and especially with ALE and with insurance relocations. I mean, So for farther in advance, we do have our prices quite higher than what I would say the market rate would be. But it almost always comes down to a negotiation with midterm rentals. And so that's a starting point. And, we do have, some charts that we work with internally that say seasonally, what do we accept in January versus what do we accept in July? It's very different in Ohio. So, all that to be said, I would say you're right. It is probably lower than what we'd expect if it was a short term, and it was higher than what we would expect if it's a long term, but somewhere in the middle there is where we land.
So I'm in Raleigh. It is not really a vacation destination. And so the way I really look at this is if this property would rent for $2,000 a month unfurnished, then I should be able to get between $4,000 and $6,000 a month as a furnished rental. And that's pretty much what I've been doing on every single one of our properties across the line. And honestly, I feel like I'm making the same, if not more, doing midterm rentals versus short-term rentals because my occupancy is through the roof. That was 8 months last year. I was 100% occupied. And I mean, those people are staying for 6, 7, 8 months at a time. So, the numbers work out that way.
I think a lot of STR operators are aiming to 5 or 6x long-term rent as a strategy, but I think that's the gross number. I think what a lot of people don't realize is in the midterm rental space, our costs are significantly lower. We're usually only paying a cleaner 1 time a month, if even, and we're not replenishing consumables on extended stays. So that's so much cheaper. Like, have you seen the cost of toilet paper lately? It's expensive. So as a real estate investor, I'm targeting 1.8x to 2x minimum on my pricing. But like Dunzi said, it's sort of and Ben, it's sort of a free-for-all because you are leaving money on the table if you don't understand how some of the insurance companies are budgeting or allocating funds to a stay. They're paying premiums on the shorter stays and then less premiums on the longer stays. And then there's also incredible upside too with the number of pets that you accept.
I just want to add in there, I think it's an excellent point on the lower expenses. And I ran a data analysis of last year for our portfolio. Of the properties that are midterm rentals, I found 35% lower expense ratio than the properties that are short-term rentals. So yes, the top line might be a little bit lower, but if you're really looking at the bottom line, it sometimes is often more profitable.
Not to mention the amount of time you don't have to spend communicating with a guest.
Yeah.
They move in and they're happy, typically.
So what about booking windows? And, for the properties that can't have the STR option, what if you don't book on time? Are you asked out? Are you, able to do stuff to prevent that? What do you do to prevent?
Say the question again?
Yeah, so for the MTR properties that don't have an STR option and you don't book on time by the 1st, are you done for the month where you're vacant? What are your strategies in that situation?
You just prorate the month. Like people move in. It's not like a first of the month thing on move in. We charge rent on the 1st of the month, but you can move in any day and then you just prorate it. I mean, that's part of the whole thing is that it's
Flexible,
somewhat on
yeah.
demand. Like, sure, depending on who your client is, but obviously if you're servicing insurance, they want to get their client into the home as fast as possible. So
There are times all throughout the month that somebody needs a midterm rental, not just on the 1st. So yeah, it might be towards the end and anytime.
Okay, well, how about, I appreciate that clarification. So how about when a guest wants to stay for a month, but it's on a certain date, like the 2nd of the month as a check out? Does that hurt your chances of occupancy following that day?
I think it's completely agnostic. Nobody plans on having a fire or water damage on the 1st of the month, and nobody plans on their construction being finished by the 1st of the month. So it's the idea is to be really, really flexible. And I think you asked about booking window. Again, nobody plans these issues that are happening to their home, at least in the insurance space, or even relocations, right? Relocations, they happen within a 2-week window, so it's always last minute. And my booking window is 3.9 days across 28 properties. But if you're positioned correctly, you will get those super long bookings. I have 11-month bookings, 10-month bookings, all on Airbnb and Instant Book and even direct.
Awesome. So we have 15 minutes left, and I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'll take questions from the audience. You guys can add it to the Slido app, if possible, and I'll look at those questions first, and then I'll take questions from with the hand as well once those are extinguished. So the last question is about tech stack. Panelists, what are your most distinct tech tools that you use for MTR, and what is missing so that the companies in the exhibition hall should be developing?
Oh, I'll take this one. Because we struggle with this, but we have operated traditional property management software alongside of Guesty, or PMS. And we are looking at different options to streamline that. But as I said, so far, the short-term PMSs have not really captured what we need in terms of lease ledger and things like that. So, yeah, I think you probably at this point, I think we're pretty close, and I think you could manipulate the software in a way to be able to service both, but yeah, I don't think we're there yet. And I have been trying since the day we started to get a company to do both.
To get a what?
To do both, like, so that we could just use one system.
I agree with that sentiment. We still use a long-term rental management software on top of Guesty, and it's dispersed. It's a real pain. But there are just things you need with midterm rentals, like client signing the lease, client having a portal to pay, those things like that work with long-term rental management software. You know, short-term rental just doesn't have it set up. So that, and then the other thing I'll say is on the distribution end, we're all still waiting for the midterm rental platform. I think, you know, it's not there, and it's very dispersed. So we have to distribute on Zillow through the long-term rental software, and then,
exactly.
you know, on all the other platforms of the short-term rental. So it is like still running two very different businesses from a tech standpoint.
And a legal.
What's that?
And a legal standpoint.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm using Go High Level. I've had a custom build out within Go High Level, so that's kind of my bread and butter. I love that because I'm able to implement all of my AI into that as well. And so I'm using a lot of AI, using a lot of ChatGPT, I'm building out custom GPTs, AI assistants, all of that stuff. So that's definitely like being incorporated into my entire tech stack.
I'm going to let out my secret today. I've been using a new PMS now for the last 13 months, and it's worked out really effectively for both short-term rental and mid-term rental hybrid model. I use a PMS called Journey, and I know that Journey had a rough start in the beginning, but they've actually significantly improved. What I love about Journey is that they're API connected into AutoHost as well as Turno, and those are two, and Wheelhouse. So not only do I manage my pricing in there, but also with my automated cleaning tasks, manual cleaning tasks, and the lease and guest verification. So with AutoHost being connected, I'm able to get a lease agreement that's not a standard lease. My lease was designed by an eviction attorney, and they signed that lease along with uploading their ID, doing a selfie, and backing up their reservation with a credit card. So I feel like I have a really robust system that will allow me to accept guests on Instant Book without too much issues.
Awesome. Yeah, so now we have some questions. Folks, if you guys want to continue to add or upload, that would be great. I'll start with the most uploaded question. The best practices or tips to connect with insurance companies. Who wants to answer that?
I can. Just like everyone else, I will beat my head around against the wall as well, because there's a lot of inefficiencies with the insurance relocation companies. I would say there's typically two tiers. When everyone says insurance relocation, there's like tier one, which is ALE Solutions, Alacrity, Sedgwick, and CRS. Those are the ones that have the direct relationships with the Allstates and the State Farms and the Progressives. And then you have your tier two, which is like my company and other smaller companies that will go and find inventory to support the tier one. And it's hard because you might have one property and you might call the insurance company and say, hey, does someone have a fire or water damage in their home? Because I have one property. Or they can call a tier two company where they have a database of properties to choose from. It makes it easier for those relocation specialists to do their job. So that's kind of the idea behind my company, is to get the database, and then we can help you make the connections when the time comes. It's all about having inventory.
I also would just agree with all that and add that it is a relationship with the people at ALE and at the insurance relocation companies. And you know, I would just say that it seems like the disconnect is, like you said, a lot of folks have one or two properties. They don't have the demand or the inventory to meet the demand, so that relationship dies. But keeping up that relationship and having access to many more midterm rentals and, you know, folks know folks in your network that do it all over the place is a huge benefit to the insurance relocation company. So they want to keep going back to you.
Just one really quick thing. Before this panel, we were talking about amenities. Amenities aren't necessarily so important, I think, and you guys can disagree with me, but location is going to be the most important when it comes to insurance relocation, because when they're displaced from their home, they don't want to drive across town to go and drop their kids off at school. So location is going to be the number one priority.
So I'll go down to the third question there. I'm nervous to deny short-term rental bookings for my properties and potentially never get an MTR booking. Is there a way to predict demand, or should I just try it?
Well, I think that you could maybe manipulate your calendar to maybe figure out how to do it. Otherwise, a lot of people do it the opposite way, which is they get the midterm booking and then you open up the orphan nights on a short-term booking. And again, you know, this is all market dependent, because in DC, we do actually have, like, we now are having interns call us for April. So we can get those, you know, we're not just servicing people that need it on demand in that way. We are servicing people who have some foresight and they're booking far out. And then obviously once you get those bookings, especially if it's, the time left is shorter than a month, you can open it up on short term.
Yeah, I would just add that I think, you know, everybody can relate to this. It's very nervous to look at an empty calendar when you're used to seeing bookings further out. But I think that kind of the folks with experience and professionals will see that, yes, there is demand and we know it's coming. And so you just kind of have to wait, and I get nervous too.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say is it really depends on your inventory. So if you have a building that has very similar properties, you can move people. So you could close one unit off for midterms, and then, you know, once you start getting those bookings in, you can move people around.
Mm-hmm.
So this is sort of similar. I was going to combine it, but it is actually a distinct question. What are your strategies to prevent long gaps between MTR bookings?
I mean, we just throw ours on Airbnb, honestly. We put it on there. And then we do a little manipulation on Airbnb as well. So I'll tell you guys this. I have a bunch of properties. So some of the properties that are actually already booked, we will then open them on Airbnb for a 30-night minimum or a 60-night minimum. And even though they're not open, but these are request to books only. So then they have to send us a message to request a book. And then that's when we say, oh, by the way, this property actually just booked, I'm so sorry. But we have these other properties, and then we send them the other properties that way. So that's a little manipulation trick that I do on Airbnb. So maybe that helps.
Pro tip.
I mean, I would just say that that's one of the reasons part of the reason you get to charge a premium is because, I mean, unless you are able, I see who's asking the question, who's also in a very regulated jurisdiction. So unless you are able to open that up, or have a large portfolio, move people around to fill those gaps, that's just, again, why you pay a premium. So if you go to just a regular multifamily and try to lease a property for under 6 months, you will pay a huge premium. So you know, again, that's part of the reason you charge a premium, is because of that risk.
I have one more tip. Open your calendar 365 days on Airbnb and control your minimum night stay using a dynamic pricing tool, because if you think about someone that's lost their home from an insurance displacement, an average water damage is 3 to 4 months, And I know a lot of Airbnb operators only open their calendars 3 months to 6 months, but the average fire is between 8 months to 12 months. So if you show your availability and you're one of the few, then they'll reach out to you.
That's another big.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that too. Most of my midterm rentals extend.
Yeah.
You know, most of them do. So like if we have a 3-month booking at this property, we just won't advertise the other dates because we're anticipating an extension.
Anyone who's reached out to squatters? What do you do to prevent this?
So I do a 30-day lease. I don't care if someone's going to stay with us for 6 months. Every 30 days, we're doing a walkthrough of the property, and then we'll re-sign a lease for them. And the reason why we do that is because in Raleigh, you got to check your area, but in Raleigh, 30 days or less on the lease is considered a short-term rental. I do not fall over into landlord-tenant law. It is not a long-term tenant, and so I can do what's called an expedited eviction process at that point. So if someone were to ever squat, which knock on wood, that nothing's happened to me yet, but if they did do that, then I could technically have them out of the property within 3 to 5 days.
Awesome. I appreciate these nuggets of wisdom here. I think you had a gentleman with a question. Was that addressed? We addressed. Thank you. All right, you're welcome. We'll take another question or two.
Can I just share about the spotter thing?
Yeah.
I had an interesting situation where someone from FEMA was staying at one of my properties, and he kept negotiating the rate with us, and we wouldn't budge. So finally, on his checkout date, he refused to leave after the checkout time and said that he was going to negotiate again with us. We're like, no. And at that point, the cleaner had already showed up, and she was like confused. What do we do now? And that's when I called a police officer. And you guys probably expected the police officer said, well, this is a civilian issue. And I said, hold up. I actually have a rental agreement from this guest. And this rental agreement stipulates that this person has a primary home address, that they've declared that they're using my home for primary purpose, for transient purposes only, and that he acknowledges in the rental agreement it's not a tenant-landlord relationship. And the police officer said, oh, that's good, because now we can go in for criminal trespassing. So that I thought was great because, you know, I've never had to exercise it, and I was really excited when it happened.
Was that over 30 days?
It was over 30. It was a 6-week stay.
So this is when it really becomes, if you're gonna do midterm rentals, you really should talk to a landlord, tenant, lawyer in your jurisdiction. Because I can tell you in DC, I mean, I, on a personal matter, was in court in front of a judge with a woman who didn't even live in the place but had a lease, and the judge said, I don't care if all she has is a potted plant in there. So you have to know the rules of your jurisdiction, and if you're in New York or DC or San Francisco, is all I would say. Just protect yourself.
Yeah, a rock solid lease is very, very important with all the right language.
Yeah, it doesn't really mean anything in DC if somebody's in there. So,
Well, my goal was to hopefully never get to court and have the police officer escort them out for criminal trespassing first.
right.
Yeah.
But just telling you DC that really wouldn't matter.
I will
Good
also
to know.
just say in midterm rentals, most guests have another home, to
Yeah.
Vivian's point. And, you know, whether it's insurance, relocation, construction work, or all of these use cases, this is not their primary residence, so it's
Right.
usually not an
Which
issue.
is actually part of the reason that people like it in DC, because you don't have that, you have less of a risk of a squatter or a holdover because of the type of person that's moving in.
Well, speaking of squatters, I don't want to go over time. We have just under a minute, so you guys get out of here soon after. Any questions that you might have, please approach the panel after this ending. And I really just want to appreciate you all at the panel and the audience for being here and engaging. So thank you, everybody. It's awesome.
Thank you.
I have a terrible personal
Thank you. That was fun, right? I learned a lot.
You guys had some awesome nuggets, like, especially near the end, you just went at it, you know?
Audience was
fired up.
engaged.
delicious.
Imagine
Yeah.
there were cocktails involved. There were cocktails involved. It'd be even like
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, we met a couple times. I'm in Cleveland.
Oh,
House
nice.
Hotels. I think we
Billy.
chat. Yeah, Billy.
Yeah, how you doing,
we
man?
chat a few times.
Yeah.
I want to partner.
Yeah.
I want to network with you. Like,
Sure.
if you're doing midterms.
I tried to send some your way one time, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I had. I knew